I'm always looking for ways to make it easier to extend the growing season for cold-hardy crops in our Zone 5 garden. Here inside the hoop house, it's pretty easy to harvest crops from our low tunnels and cold frames, and the 2 layers of protection keep many of the crops growing all winter. But growing under 2 layers of protection in the low tunnels outside the hoop house has always been a chore. So to make it easier, I designed a new low tunnel that has 2 built-in layers of protection and is hinged for easy harvesting. Today I'll show you how I built this 2-layered hinged low tunnel. And at the end of the video, I'll let you know about an easy way you can support One Yard Revolution without spending an extra penny. Before getting into the details of the build, I'll start with the design basics. Though I've referred to it as a low tunnel, it's really a smaller low tunnel nested inside a slightly larger one. I used 1/2-inch Schedule 40 PVC for the hoops and purlins and covered them with 6mm greenhouse plastic. Each layer, in effect, moves the garden bed 1½ zones to the south. So with 2 layers, we've created a Zone 8 microclimate here in Zone 5. The hoops and plastic are attached to a wood frame that sits on top of the raised bed, and the frame is attached to the bed with 2 hinges that allow the low tunnel to be open for easy harvesting and venting. Now let's move on to the build. I started by constructing a simple wooden frame that sits on top of the raised bed and is attached to it with 2 hinges. I cut 4 2x4s to length with a circular saw. 2 of the boards were cut to the same length as the bed from north to south. The hinges and hoops will be attached to these boards. The other 2 were cut to the east-west length of the bed, minus the 7-inch width of the first 2 boards, so their combined length would match that of the bed. After drilling pilot holes with a countersink bit to prevent splitting, I connected the 2 boards on each corner with 2 long deck screws. Then I attached the frame to the bed with 2 hinges. It's important to attach the hinges and the hoops to these boards, which span the full length of the bed, because the torque from the hoops and hinges would likely twist the other 2 boards. Next, I attached 2 sets of hoops to the wood frame. I started by drilling pilot holes in 8 1/2-inch PVC end caps. I attached 2 of the PVC end caps to each corner of the low tunnel frame with deck screws. 1 cap was attached to the inner corner of the frame, and 1 was attached near the outer corner. I then cut my 4 1/2-inch PVC hoop pipes to lengths with a pipe cutter. To achieve outer hoops the size of a half circle, I cut the pipes to a length of 3.14 times the radius of the half circle, which is half of the north-south length of the bed. I cut the inner hoop several inches shorter. I then inserted one end of an outer hoop pipe into a PVC end cap on an outer corner of the frame. Before securing the other end of the pipe, I slipped 3 3/4 to 1/2-inch PVC reducing tees over the pipe. These will be used to attach the purlins that will connect the outer hoops. With the reducing tees in place, I inserted the other end of the pipe in the end cap on the opposite outer corner. I then repeated the same process for the second outer hoop. The 3/4-inch sections of the reducing tees easily slip over the hoops, while the 1/2-inch reductions will provide a snug fit for the 1/2-inch PVC purlins. I then attached the inner hoops to the PVC end caps on the inner corners of the frame. Next, it was time to attach the 3 purlins to the outer hoops. I positioned the reducing tees so that there was 1 in the middle and 1 on each end, and inserted the purlins into the reducing tees. After inserting the purlins, I slid them into position and secured them with white Gorilla Tape. Screws would have probably been a better option, but the tape was quick and easy. The top purlin was positioned at the center of the hoop pipes, and the others were a little less than halfway down from the top. Unfortunately, when I first set up the inner hoops, I didn't add purlins to them. I thought because the outer hoops would support the weight of the snow, they might not be needed on the inside. But soon after attempting to attach plastic to the inner hoops, I realized they'd bow in when I was trying to get a snug fit of the plastic. With the pipes already locked in place, I couldn't slip PVC T-fittings over them. So instead, I attached the purlins using PVC snap tees. The snap tees saved the day, but I struggled mightily to snap them into place. It took a while, but I eventually managed to get them all on, and then installed the purlins. With the hoops in place, I then waited until just before our first freezing temperatures to apply the first layer of plastic. Waiting for the colder weather reduces the amount of venting required, and also minimizes the risk of overheating cool weather crops under a low tunnel. At 14 feet wide, the 6mm greenhouse film was wide enough to cover the inner hoops. To get the right length, I draped the film over the hoops and cut it, leaving a little extra on both sides. I then spread the plastic out over the hoops and pulled it tight as I fastened the film to the hoops with 1/2 inch PVC clips. I used 4 clips on each side, 2 near the top and 1 about halfway down on each side, pulling the plastic tight as I went. To secure the plastic to the frame on the north and south sides of the low tunnel, I pulled it tight and pinched it under 1x2 furring strips that were nailed to the top of the frame with 1 3/4 inch roofing nails. For the end walls, I pulled the excess plastic down and toward the middle and secured it with furring strips attached with screws to the top of the low tunnel frame. I used screws instead of nails because they did a better job of pinching the excess plastic bunched up under the furring strips. Finally, I trimmed the excess plastic, leaving just enough for me to grip the next time I have to apply the cover. I then waited a few more weeks until temperatures were regularly dipping below freezing before applying the second layer of plastic. The procedure for covering the outer hoops was very similar. I draped the plastic over the hoops, pulled it tight, and secured it with PVC snap clamps. The only differences were that the furring strips were secured to the outside of the low tunnel frame instead of the top, and I only used screws to attach them. The screws will do a better job of holding the plastic in place under the weight of a heavy snow. To finish off the project, I attached 1 handle to the low tunnel and 1 to the raised bed. The handles make it easier to open the low tunnel and to secure it on windy days. To vent the low tunnel, I'll simply prop it open with these 2x4s, and if it's windy, I'll secure the top by attaching a bungee cord to the handles. If less venting is required, I'll turn the 2x4s on their sides, and if even less is needed, I'll lay them flat. It can get pretty windy here, but there are so many buildings, trees, and fences surrounding the garden that I don't expect wind to be much of a problem. And because I waited for it to get quite cold before covering the low tunnel, it will remain closed most of the time, which reduces the risk of the wind catching it like a sail. However, if your garden is in a very windy open area, this design might not work for you at all, or you may have to take additional precautions to prevent wind damage. One final issue that I may run into is that the wood frame of the low tunnel will freeze to the top of the raised bed. But I don't expect this to be much of a problem, because you can't harvest greens anyway until they thaw out. So by the time the sun hits the low tunnel and warms the greens up enough so that they can be harvested, I expect the ice freezing the 2 layers of wood together will have also melted. With the project complete, harvesting will now be much easier in winter. The low tunnel is light enough that I can easily hold it open while harvesting. I can also prop it open. A smaller version that I built on a 4x8 bed is light enough that I can open it all the way and let it rest on the ground. My wife prefers this one because it's much easier for her to use, and she doesn't have anything looming over her head while harvesting. Its design is essentially the same, except that each layer has 3 hoops instead of 2 and only 1 purlin. With the 2 layers of protection provided by our new low tunnels, we'll be harvesting cold-hardy crops through the winter and into the spring, when we'll start to peel off the layers as temperatures warm. In late March, when temperatures are no longer dipping that much below freezing, I'll remove the plastic from the outer hoops. And then when there are no more freezing temperatures in the forecast, probably in late April, I'll remove the second layer of cover. Removing the cover as early as possible reduces the amount of venting I'll have to do and also decreases the risk of overheating cool weather crops under a low tunnel. I hope you found this how-to helpful and that this design might give you some ideas on how to make it a little bit easier to extend the growing season in your garden. Well, I'd better get back to harvesting dinner. Hard to beat fresh produce in December. Before closing, I wanted to share an easy way that you can show your support for One Yard Revolution without spending an extra penny. If you live in the United States and shop on Amazon, all you have to do is follow this URL when doing your regular shopping or even holiday shopping. I've included a link to the URL in the description below. There's nothing special to buy, and the prices, choices, and shopping experience will be the same as always on Amazon. The only difference will be that a small percentage of the sale will go to One Yard Revolution to help me buy the computers, editing software, cameras, and microphones I need to bring you videos. Much to my surprise and delight, many of you have already done your Amazon shopping on my Amazon store, even though I've only mentioned it once on Facebook. In fact, over the last 30 days, 108 items have been ordered. I can't thank you enough for your support. If you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't already, please subscribe for more videos on how to grow a lot of food on a little land without spending much or working harder than you have to. Get it, Oscar. Get it, baby.